The sickening saga of Planned Parenthood continues to take front stage, and the Center for Medical Progress has released 4 undercover videos. They show officials from Planned Parenthood talking about selling the body parts of unborn babies. But surprisingly, a federal judge has said, no, you can't show them anymore. You can't release those videos. What happened?
Well, the American Center for Law and Justice is defending them in court. We're going to talk to Jay Sekulow in just a moment about the case. Those videos led to a move in Congress to take your taxpayer money away from Planned Parenthood. It gets more than $500 million every year. George Thomas has the story.
4 undercover videos.
I think the per item thing works a little better.
Showing Planned Parenthood's doctors haggling over the price of unborn baby parts.
You can see how much we can get out of it.
Have members of Congress pushing to defund the group's activities.
I think most Americans don't want their tax dollars going to this.
Senator Rand Paul and 23 other lawmakers have introduced legislation to stop funding Planned Parenthood. 40% of the agency's money, roughly about $500 million, comes from taxpayers.
You know, manipulating the baby, turning the baby around to get to body parts, and then selling the liver, and the doctors cavalierly saying, oh, well, yeah, liver's popular right now for sale. I think when something is so morally repugnant to so many people, why should tax dollars go to this?
Since nearly all Democrats are opposed to the legislation, Republicans will have a hard time getting the 60 votes necessary to keep the bill alive. Still, the issue could come up again during budget talks in October, when some Republicans are threatening a government shutdown if Planned Parenthood isn't defunded.
Well, what do you do for this?
Meanwhile, the group behind the undercover recordings, Center for Medical Progress, says it has 8 to 10 more videos to release, including a segment that reportedly shows that babies were born alive before their parts were sold. But a federal judge issued a temporary restraining order, preventing the pro-life group from releasing further videos. George Thomas, CBN News.
Well, the American Center for Law and Justice is defending the Center for Medical Progress in court. And Jay Sekulow, the general counsel of that group, is here with us right now. Jay, what's the matter with this judge? How does he block this video? What's his ground?
Well, right now he's got a temporary restraining order in place. That's all it is, and it does not block all of the videos from being released. It only impacts videos that might be related to the National Abortion Federation. Planned Parenthood has not filed that lawsuit yet, and they are not bound by this TRO. In other words, the TRO doesn't protect them in any way. And in fact, we're arguing today, this afternoon in federal court, that the TRO should be extinguished, that it is a classic prior restraint on investigative journalism, journalism that is protected by the First Amendment. And while they're trying to make the videographer as if he was a lawbreaker, the real lawbreaker here are the abortionists that were engaged in the commercial use and sale of fetal body parts. So the reality is they've tried to change the debate. In our briefs that we worked on right through the weekend and even this morning, we are putting it back into the proper context to protect the First Amendment. This is an aggressive attack on the First Amendment, and I will tell you, Pat, we have ACLJ lawyers and a lot of Regent Law graduates working literally around the clock this weekend to push this back.
Do you think the judge is going to buy it? It goes before the judge because you'll get an appeal. Does that go to the District Court of Appeal?
Well, it's not the most hospitable district in the country, the Northern District of California. I'm a member of that court. That is a very left-of-center court. But if they were to protect the First Amendment and understand the context upon which the investigative project was engaged in, it becomes clear that they did not violate any laws, and that a prior restraint on speech, a judicially imposed prior restraint on speech, would not be the appropriate remedy here. So, Pat, I've already laid out a plan. We've known each other a long time. I've laid out a plan that we will take this up to the if we don't get it resolved that's to our liking, we're going to take it up to the Court of Appeals for a stay. If we don't get it there, I'm going to take it to Justice Kennedy. This could move very, very quickly to the Supreme Court.
What's the deal with the law? If Congress is ready to defund Planned Parenthood, they get an incredible $528, I believe, $1 million a year of federal funds. Why would Obama want to risk his legacy by vetoing that?
Because he is the most pro-abortion president in U.S. history. We're going to have that vote this afternoon. And Pat, let me also say there's congressional investigations going on. Senators Grassley, Senators Cruz, Senator Portman are all looking at the allegations that have been brought forward by these videos, and a number of states have done the same thing. Texas probably being the furthest along in their investigative process, but Florida looking at it now and other states. So this idea, I mean, part of the interesting dynamic here is the federal government through the Senate has requested some of this video material. And what is this judge going to try to do? Superimpose his will on a co-equal branch of government, which would violate the separation of powers? So all of that's going to be debated again this afternoon in San Francisco. This is only the TRO stage, so I expect we'll have a preliminary injunction hearing and maybe even a trial in the next 10 to 21 days. So there's a lot of work here. We're working full bore on this, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure these videos can be released. The veneer of Planned Parenthood has been peeled back, and the First Amendment needs to be protected.
Jay, it looks like this is going to be a significant issue in the next general election. What do you think?
I do think so. Pat, look, I think this is the most significant pro-life case in the last 20 years. And I've done most of the pro-life cases, not all of them, but I've done most of them. This is the most significant pro-life case in the last 20 years. I don't see how this is ignored in the presidential debates, especially when we have a situation where so much money, taxpayer dollars, goes to Planned Parenthood. That should be unconscionable. That could end today if the Senate gets its way and has enough votes to override a veto. Even if they do not, I clearly think it'll be brought up in the general election, no doubt.
One last question. They say they've got a video of dismembering of a fully intact baby. I mean, the baby was born fully intact, and they cut it apart to sell its members. Is that correct?
I'm not at liberty with attorney-client information to disclose what's coming in the next videos. Let me just say this, Pat. We've seen nothing yet.
Okay.
What's coming is going to be much more dramatic.
Much more dramatic. Jay, I appreciate what you're doing. God bless you. The American Center for Law and Justice, ladies and gentlemen. Pat. It's a tremendous organization fighting for your freedom and for the rights of people just like you across the country. But isn't this horrible? Hillary Clinton comes out and says, but you don't understand, they've done so much good for women's health, so much good. And the president says, if a bill comes to defund Planned Parenthood. Now, the Republicans have been very smart in the Senate. They have said, okay, we're not going to in any way take away funding for women's health. That stays in the bill. There'll still be appropriations. The only thing is specifically one organization ain't going to get any more federal money. That's all. It'll go to anybody else, civic centers, community organizations, community health centers, all across America, that they can apply and be eligible for federal funding. But so they can't make an argument that says, well, we're against women's health. Cutting up unborn babies is hardly the health of women. Well, in other news, they came to America from Iraq to escape ISIS. But so far, the story of these refugees doesn't have a happy ending. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. Here's John.
Thanks, Pat. The Iraqi Christians were fleeing religious persecution from radical Islam. And instead of being welcomed to America as religious refugees, they were arrested and sent to prison in San Diego. Gary Lane brings us their story.
Last year, 300,000 immigrants from Muslim countries were welcomed into the United States. Most came seeking a better life. But what about Christians escaping ISIS?
Our border's open to everyone except Christians.
Mark Arabo is spokesman for the Minority Humanity Foundation. He recently prayed with fellow Iraqi Christians outside San Diego's Otay detention facility. They gathered in protest and support for some of those detained inside. For nearly 6 months now, the U.S. Immigration Service has imprisoned 20 Chaldean Catholics for attempting to enter the United States from Mexico without prior approval. Rarely does the government comment about pending detainee cases, However, Arabo says the INS did tell the families that it lacked sufficient resources to go through individual case files to provide them with an explanation. Arabo suggests the families deserve better.
And so we're going to protest, we're going to pray for the administration and the officials to open up their hearts and minds to the victims of genocide. We're not going to stop, and we're going to hold them accountable.
Iraqi Christian Amr Moshi served as an interpreter for the United States Army during the Iraq War. Militant Muslims threatened his life because he worked for the Americans. Now he's living in San Diego and prays that his 26-year-old cousin Ziad Mati will soon be able to join him. Ziad was taken into INS custody last January. His case is finally scheduled to be heard later this week. Amr wonders why his cousin is still detained. He's not an Islamic terrorist, explained Amr, but a kind Christian who would not hurt anyone.
Ziad will not be harmful to this country, will not be danger to this country. Let him go live with his family. It's not too much. He's young, he can work, he can pay taxes, he can be happy around his family. And his family could sponsor him.
And just moments before this prayer vigil, word came that the mother of one of the detainees inside had died of cancer. The detainee had requested release for a day or two to go see her mother in the hospital before she died. That request was denied. These Chaldean Christians say that's just another example of a broken immigration system. And Amr says many of them now believe America's early troop withdrawal from Iraq is to blame for the rise of ISIS. The militant Islamic group forces Christians to convert to Islam, leave, or die.
They did not finish the mission. And we can't get papers to stay in America. Where we should go now?
When did the symbol of America become a gated fence as opposed to the Statue of Liberty? Give me your poor, your huddled masses yearning to be free. These are those Christians.
Gary Lane, CBN News, San Diego.
A heartbreaking story, Pat.
Yeah, I don't understand it. Ladies and gentlemen, maybe you can tell me. I don't know what is happening. We allow criminals to come across the border, and it's not just tens of 20s, it's thousands and hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens are coming across the border. They're being given preferred treatment. They're being bused into the heartland of America, resettled in various cities. Unbelievable courtesies being given to them. And we've got sanctuary cities like San Francisco where there's a convicted murderer who kills that woman, shoots her down. He's crazed killer allowed to come back into this country after being deported several times and given sanctuary. And here are these Christians who are honestly fleeing religious persecution are being put in jail. What kind of a country do we have, John?
Pat, President Obama is ordering steeper cuts in greenhouse gas emissions at America's power plants. It's part of a new plan he's unveiling to slash carbon dioxide limits 32% by 2030 and to move the U.S. to wind and solar energy. The president calls it the biggest, most important step we've ever taken to combat climate change. But critics say the rules would drive up energy costs, hurt the economy, and disrupt job markets. A Heritage Foundation study found the president's plan would kill almost 600,000 manufacturing jobs. Many states have threatened not to comply, and opponents plan to sue. It will be up to President Obama's successor whether to implement his plan. And Pat, the White House is using the Clean Air Act to say that the new regulations are legal.
Oh, they'll do everything. Socialism. Ladies and gentlemen, we depend on the electric grid, and the only way to keep the electric grid going is through so-called fossil fuels. If it's not going to be coal, it needs to be natural gas. But it's got to be something, because the idea of getting enough energy for our nation from solar panels or biomass or some of these clean energy things is just an illusion. It is a pipe dream. It isn't going to happen. And what it will mean is there will be rolling blackouts across the country. A number of power plants will go out of business. There won't be enough fuel to fuel the demand of our growing economy. Thousands of people are going to lose their jobs. That's what happens when you put a socialist in government. That's what socialists do. They don't care about people. They talk about people. Oh, we care about the middle class. We care about the poor. The middle class have got it worse now than they did 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. The number of people on welfare has skyrocketed. The number of people who've dropped out of the labor force is alarming. And we have the weakest recovery from any recession in the history of this nation. And it's stagnant, and people are hurting, and there's anger. But the ones that are doing it are the ones at the levers of power in Washington, and they are controlling what's being done. They are burdening the economy with these crazy regulations, high taxes, and now Hillary Clinton wants to come and recommend huge tax increases on capital gains. I mean, the whole thing is just incredible that they don't understand what makes for freedom, what makes for a healthy economy. So if people are interested in jobs and they're interested in having increased compensation for the job they're doing, they need a growing, healthy economy. And they need less government and more business and more free enterprise.